Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're putting on our insight goggles, you could say, and taking a really close look at the global market for hip replacement implants, specifically focusing on 2025. We've got a pretty detailed report here, and our goal really is to unpack the key information, market size, growth projections, what's driving it all.
Exactly. We'll look at the big global picture first, then sort of zoom into the different regions and the specific segments within this really vital healthcare area.
Yeah, it's crucial stuff. And the data we're working from, it's mostly market research outlining, the size, growth rates, influencing factors.
That's right. It gives us a pretty comprehensive view of the numbers and, well, the story behind them in this part of the medical device world.
Okay, so speaking of numbers, here's something that jumped out at me right away. The global market. Forecasted to hit, get this, USD 5.46 billion in 2025.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's expected to climb even further to USD 6.65 billion by 2033. Let's maybe start there. What's your first take on figures like that?
Well, it immediately tells you this is a market of, considerable scale already.
Yeah.
And that projection, it signals pretty consistent expansion over the next, 8 years or so?
Right.
That multi-billion-dollar value really underscores how widespread the need for these procedures actually is. It reflects, I think, both the aging global population we hear so much about, but also the ongoing progress in orthopedics.
Exactly. So let's dig into those numbers a bit more. The report says that 2025 global market size is estimated right at USD 500 to 460 million.
5.46 billion, yeah.
Pretty hefty.
Right.
And the projected growth, the CAGR compound annual growth rate that's pegged at 2.50% between 2025 and 2033. That gets us to that USD 662 million mark, roughly 6.65 billion.
Yeah, right.
What is that overall growth rate, that 2.5%? What does that suggest to you? Is that fast,
Yeah.
slow, average?
Well, 2.5%, while maybe not, explosive growth like you see in some tech sectors, it definitely points to a stable, reliable upward trend. Solid. It probably indicates that the core factors fueling this market, like you mentioned, the increasing elderly population, rising rates of osteoarthritis, things like that, they're likely to, remain pretty potent and just keep driving that predictable growth.
Okay, that makes sense. Stable, not explosive.
Yep.
Now, the global picture is one thing, but it gets really interesting when you break it down by region, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's where you see the real variations.
So North America, according to this report, holds the lion's share, over 40% of the market, estimated value. USD 20 million, give or take, in 2025.
The huge chunk.
But interestingly, their projected CAGR is more modest, only 1.3% from 2025 to 2033. So what's going on there? Big market now, but maybe slower growth ahead.
That's a great point. It's probably a sign of market maturity, right? North America has a well-established healthcare system. Hip replacements are common. They've already built up that substantial market.
So less pent-up demand, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. The immediate unmet need might be less pronounced compared to, say, developing regions. And within North America, the U.S. is obviously the giant. USD 1,594 million in 2025, roughly.
Right.
But its CAGR is even lower, 1.1%. The report links that to high healthcare spending, which implies, widespread access already exists.
Okay. And Canada and Mexico.
Canada's interesting. Smaller market, about USD 242 million, but a slightly higher CAGR at 2.1%.
Yeah.
And the report notes increased demand for minimally invasive treatments there.
So maybe specific trends driving faster growth even within a mature region.
Could be. And Mexico is around USD 184 million with a 1.8% CAGR. So overall, North America is big, but maybe stabilizing in terms of growth rate.
Okay, let's hop across the pond to Europe. It accounts for over 30% of the market share globally, estimated at USD 1,583 million in 2025.
Still very significant.
Yeah, but again, a relatively moderate growth rate forecast CAGR of 1.4% through 2033. Similar story to North America in some ways.
Somewhat similar, yes. A large established market, but perhaps not the rapid expansion phase anymore. But within Europe, there's quite a bit of variation.
Like where?
Well, Germany leads in market size, around USD 313 million, with a 1.6% CAGR. They mention increasing awareness of the benefits as a factor there.
Okay.
The UK is next, about USD 266 million, but with a slightly higher CAGR, 2.2%, linked to, existing demand in their established healthcare system.
Right.
But then you look at countries like Russia, France, Italy, Spain, their CAGRs are actually quite low. We're talking 0.4% up to maybe 0.8%.
Really quite slow then.
Yeah, and even the rest of Europe category is projected at only 0.1% growth. So it's a real mix. It probably reflects different healthcare funding models, demographics, maybe adoption rates across the continent.
Fascinating. Okay, now this is where, as you said, the story seems to really pick up pace.
Hmm.
The Asia-Pacific region, APAC, holds around 23% of the global market share, estimated at USD 310 million in 2025. But, and this is the key part, it's projected to have the highest UAGR by far, 5.2% between 2025 and 2033.
That's more than double the global average. Definitely the growth engine.
Wow, so what's driving that? What's happening on the ground there?
It's really a combination of factors, I think. First, look at China. Huge market already, USD 550 million, and growing fast at 4.7% CAGR. The report mentions increased urbanization as a factor.
Urbanization, how does that connect?
Well, urbanization often leads to lifestyle changes, maybe more sedentary work, different stresses on joints over time,
Yeah.
potentially contributing to higher rates of things like osteoarthritis down the line.
Interesting link. And India.
India really stands out. A smaller market currently, maybe USD 131 million, but the highest national CAGR in the report, 7.1%.
7%.
Yeah, and that's linked strongly to rising disposable incomes. As people have more money, they can afford better healthcare, including elective procedures like hip replacements. They're more likely to seek treatment.
Makes sense. More access, more demand.
Exactly. And you see strong growth in Japan, South Korea too, around 3.7, 4.3% respectively. And other parts like Southeast Asia are showing very high CAGRs as well, 6% even.
So overall for APAC, it's aging populations, plus improving healthcare access, plus economic growth.
That sums it up pretty well. A large and aging population base,
Yeah.
healthcare infrastructure getting better and making these procedures more accessible, growing awareness, and just more economic prosperity generally across the region. It's a potent mix for market growth.
Definitely paints a clear picture of APAC as the hot spot for growth. What about South America? Where does it fit in?
South America's smaller, accounts for just over 5% of the global share. That's about USD 207 million in 2025. The CGR is decent, though, 2.8% projected through 2033.
Okay, so growing steadily.
Yeah. Brazil is the largest market there, around USD 89 million, with a 3.4% CAGR. They specifically note the rising prevalence of osteoarthritis.
Right, a common theme.
And Argentina is interesting, too, about USD 35 million, but with a 3.7% CAGR, which they link to advancements in healthcare infrastructure. So, yeah, smaller overall, but definitely a steady growth opportunity.
Got it. And the remaining regions, the Middle East and Africa, they seem to be the smallest portions of the global market based on the figures.
That's correct. The Middle East holds around 2% market share, maybe USD 218 million in 2025. Its CAGR is actually pretty good, though, at 3.0%.
Oh, higher than North America or Europe, then.
Yeah, slightly higher growth rate percentage-wise. Countries like Turkey, UAE, Saudi Arabia show KGRs over 3%. Turkey cites its superior medical infrastructure, while places like Qatar mention increased healthcare investment.
Okay. And Africa?
Africa represents about 1% of the market, around USD 120 million in 2025. The CAGR is projected at 2.2%. South Africa is the largest market within the continent. Nigeria is mentioned specifically for an increased prevalence of hip-related illnesses driving some demand.
So smaller markets currently, but still showing some growth potential as healthcare improves there too.
Exactly. Room to grow, definitely, as access and infrastructure continue to develop.
Okay, so we've mapped out the world pretty much.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears now and look inside the market. The report breaks things down by product type, materials, and end users. What are the key trends there? Let's start with product outlook.
Sure. So in terms of product types, total hip replacement implants are identified as the fastest growing segment overall.
The full replacement. Makes sense for severe cases.
Right. But interestingly, partial hip replacement implants are also noted as a rapidly expanding segment.
Oh, why is that?
Well, they're generally less invasive procedures, often associated with shorter recovery times, so there's a growing appeal there, possibly reflecting that trend towards more patient-centric options, quicker recovery, maybe preserving more bone.
That makes sense. So just quickly, when would you typically opt for a partial over a total replacement? What's the usual scenario?
Typically, partial hip replacements, sometimes called hemiarthroplasty, are more common when the damage is mainly limited to the ball part of the joint, the femoral head, often due to a fracture, like a hip fracture. The socket part, the acetabulum, might still be healthy.
Ah, I see. So you only replace the damaged good.
Exactly. It aims to preserve more of the patient's own anatomy, which, as you said, can sometimes lead to quicker rehab or feel more natural for certain patients.
Got it. Okay, moving on to materials. What are these implants actually made of, and what are the trends there?
Well, the workhorse, you could say, is metal on polyethylene, or MOP. That's where you have a metal ball moving within a durable plastic polyethylene socket. These hold the largest share currently.
Why are they so dominant?
They have a very long track record, decades of use. They offer a good balance of durability, biocompatibility, and importantly, cost effectiveness.
Okay, but are things changing?
Yes, ceramic on metal implants, COM, are expanding rapidly. These use a super hard ceramic ball against a metal socket liner.
And the advantage there?
They're known for extremely low wear rates. Very durable. Because of this, they're often favored for younger, more active patients who might put more demand on their hip joint over a longer period. The idea is longevity.
So a trend towards materials suited for more active lifestyles, potentially lasting longer.
Exactly. It reflects both material science advances and perhaps changing patient demographics or expectations.
Are there any other materials on the horizon? Or is it mainly MOPI and COM fighting it out?
Those are definitely the main players right now, but there's always ongoing research. You hear about ceramic on polyethylene, ceramic on ceramic, even newer composites trying to, get the best of all worlds, low wear, high stability, good biocompatibility. But MOPI and COM are really the dominant forces in the market currently.
Okay, and finally for segmentation, where are these operations actually happening? Who are the main end users?
Unsurprisingly, hospitals represent the largest segment. They have the surgical suites, the specialized staff, the infrastructure needed for these often complex procedures.
Makes sense.
However, the report highlights orthopedic clinics as a sector experiencing rapid growth.
Ah, specialized centers.
Exactly.
Okay.
These clinics focus specifically on musculoskeletal issues, including joint replacements. They might offer more specialized, perhaps more efficient care pathways for these types of patients. It's a trend towards specialization in healthcare delivery.
Right, that fits with other trends we see in healthcare. Okay, this gives us a really granular view. Now, let's zoom back out a bit. What are the big forces pushing this whole market forward? The report mentions several key drivers.
Yes, several key factors are propelling growth. Probably the biggest one is simply the increasing prevalence of osteoarthritis globally. It's a major cause of the joint damage that necessitates replacement.
The wear and tear arthritis.
Precisely. Then there's the growing adoption of customized hip prostheses. Using patient-specific implants, maybe 3D printed, can potentially improve fit and outcomes.
More personalization.
Right. Also, government investments in healthcare infrastructure, especially in those developing economies we talked about, are crucial for expanding access. And then there's just, increased awareness among the public about hip replacement surgery, that it's effective, it improves quality of life. And finally, the overall expansion of the medical devices industry itself creates a supportive environment.
So, quite a few positive tailwinds. But what about the other side? Are there things holding the market back? Any restraints?
There are. The report identifies rising competition as one factor. It's a crowded space with big players, which can put pressure on prices and make it harder for companies to maintain margins or market share.
Okay, competition. What else?
The other big one is cost. Hip replacement implants and the associated surgery can be very expensive. This is a significant barrier, especially for patients in regions without comprehensive insurance coverage or, in lower socioeconomic groups. Cost is a real restraint on access.
That's a crucial point. Are there any sort of glimmers of hope on the cost front? Innovations in manufacturing or materials that might bring prices down eventually?
That's definitely the hope, and an area of active R&D. Things like advancements in manufacturing, maybe more efficient processes, potentially 3D printing becoming more mainstream for standard components, not just custom ones, could help. And ongoing material science, looking for, equally effective but perhaps less costly materials. It's a slow process, but addressing the cost barrier is key to widening access globally.
Absolutely. So it sounds like a really dynamic market, big opportunities, significant growth, but also real challenges like competition and cost. You mentioned the big players. Who are they? What's the competitive landscape like?
It's described as highly competitive, as you'd expect, dominated by a few major global medical device companies. Names you'd probably recognize: Zimmer Biomet, Johnson & Johnson through their DePuy Synthes division, Stryker Corporation, Smith & Nephew, Peel and Stack. These companies have established brands, wide reach.
The usual suspects in orthopedics, yeah.
Pretty much. And the report stresses that continuous innovation and really strong distribution networks are critical for staying competitive. It's not just about having a good implant. It's about getting it to surgeons and hospitals efficiently and supporting it with new technology.
Any recent examples of that innovation?
Yeah, the report mentions a couple. Stryker launched something called the OrthoQ Guidance System in May 2023, likely related to surgical planning or navigation. And another company, Anovis, launched an augmented reality visualization system back in July 2022, again, probably aimed at enhancing surgical precision. So technology integration is definitely happening.
Very cool. Okay, so bringing this all together now, if you had to boil it down, what are the most crucial takeaways for our listeners about this global hip replacement market?
Well, I'd say first, it's a substantial market, and it's definitely growing steadily, even if the overall global rate isn't astronomical. Second, there are significant regional differences. Asia Pacific is clearly the powerhouse for future growth.
Yeah.
Third, the key drivers are pretty clear. Aging populations, the high prevalence of conditions like osteoarthritis, and ongoing technological advancements in both implants and surgical techniques. Fourth, cost and competition are the main headwinds or challenges facing the market.
Got it.
And finally, we're seeing interesting trends within the market itself, like the growth of partial replacements alongside total ones, the rise of advanced materials like ceramics, and a shift towards more specialized orthopedic clinics. It all points towards more personalized and maybe more efficient patient care pathways developing.
That's a great summary. And maybe a final thought for everyone listening, reflecting on all this, especially that rapid growth in places like APAC and the constant progress in materials and techniques. How might the increasing availability of these personalized implant solutions, maybe combined with wider use of less invasive procedures, how might that really reshape the future? Could it fundamentally change the experience and, maybe more importantly, the accessibility of hip replacement surgery for people all around the world? Definitely something to think about as this field continues to evolve. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.